Hi, my name is Shinko. Welcome to my channel. We have been escaping from reality and the horrors of real life with the Warriors, Fire and Ice. It is the second book in the series. I've already read the first book. You can check out my previous videos on that. We are beginning chapter 8. We left off at an unfortunate event. WindClan was indeed brought back home. But Fireheart and Greystripe with Deadfoot and One Whisker decided to take a little shortcut on the way home. And that shortcut was through riverclan territory. And unfortunately, they ran into a riverclan patrol. It turned into a very large fight atop of a ledge near a gorge. And unfortunately, a riverclan warrior fell to their death. Now, this was a mission that all the clans agreed on. You know, they were going to try and find WindClan and bring them home. But does that still make Fireheart and Greystripe in the right for making this decision to travel as they did? I don't know. Let's find out. Leopard Fur lifted her head and yowled into the wind. White Claw, no! Greystripe scrambled backward until all four paws were on safe ground. His wet fur was bristling and his eyes were wide with shock. I tried to grab him. He just lost his footing. I didn't mean to. The words tumbled out breathlessly. Fireheart bounded across to his friend and pressed his nose into his flank for comfort, but Greystripe backed blindly away. One by one, the other cats turned away from the edge and looked at Greystripe. The riverclan cat's eyes were narrowed with fury, their shoulders tense. Willowpelt and Whitestorm moved instinctively towards Greystripe, taking up defensive positions on either side of him. Leopard Fur growled deep in her throat, but it was a warning to her other cats that they were to stay back. The riverclan deputy stared Tiger Claw straight in the eye. This has gone beyond a border fight, she murmured. We shall return to our clan. It has become a matter to settle at another time in a different way. Tiger Claw defiantly returned Leopard Fur's stare. He showed no fear, but merely gave the smallest of nods. Leopard Fur flicked the tip of her tail, then turned and padded away. The riverclan cats followed her, and the whole patrol disappeared into the bushes. Leopard Fur's menacing words made Fireheart shiver. A sense of foreboding settled in his heart like a cold shadow as he realized that this battle might have started a war. We should leave, meowed Deadfoot, limping forward. Your two young warriors served us well, and my clan thanks you. But the formal words of gratitude sounded hollow after the tragedy they just witnessed. Tiger Claw nodded. The two WindClan warriors began to head back before staring back and saying once more, I'm sorry for what has happened. Fireheart meowed a quiet farewell to One Whisker as he passed. One Whisker glanced briefly at him and walked on. Fireheart noticed that Sandpaw was standing at the edge of the gorge, staring down at the torrent below. Her paws seemed frozen to the ground. Her eyes remained fixed on the steep drop. Fireheart guessed she had realized how close she had come to sharing White Claw's fate. Fireheart started towards her, but Tiger Claw growled, Follow me. The tabby warrior charged away through the trees, and the rest of the patrol followed after him, but Fireheart hesitated beside Greystripe. Come on, he urged. We should keep up. Greystripe shrugged, his eyes dull and clouded with pain. He began to pad up to the others, dragging his paws as if they were made from stone. Soon, the cats ahead of them were out of sight, but Fireheart was able to track them by their scent. Tiger Claw was leading them back toward ThunderClan territory, straight through riverclan's strip of forest. Fireheart guessed there was no need to worry about riverclan patrols right now. The damage has been done. It would be pointless to take the long way around by 4 trees. Tigerclaw had halted the patrol and was waiting for Fireheart and Greystripe at the border of ThunderClan's territory. "I thought I had told you to follow me," he growled. Fireheart began. "The sooner Greystripe gets back to camp, better," interrupted Tigerclaw. Greystripe said nothing, but Fireheart bristled at the deputy's harsh tone. "Whiteclaw's death wasn't his fault." Tigerclaw turned away. "I know," he meowed, "but it's done. Come on, this time keep up." He leaped away, crossing the scent markers that bounded ThunderClan territory. Fireheart had been looking forward to this moment since leaving WindClan's den among the Thunderpaths. Now, he hardly noticed as he pounded past the markers, keeping one eye on Greystripe. The rain eased as they followed the familiar trail to the camp. When the patrol emerged from the gorse tunnel, some of the other clan cats bounded out of their dens, their tails held high in greeting. "Did you find WindClan? Are they safe?" Mousefur called. Fireheart nodded absently, but felt too hollow to reply. Mousefur's tail dropped. The other cats hung back at the edge of the clearing. The expressions on their faces of the returning cats told them something serious had happened. "Come with me," Tigerclaw ordered Fireheart and Greystripe, leading them towards Bluestar's den. Fireheart kept close to Greystripe so that his fur brushed against his friend. Greystripe just pattered onward, neither drawing closer to Fireheart nor moving away. A warm mew welcomed them from the shadows beyond the lichen. The 3 cats pushed their way into the snug cave. "Welcome!" Bluestar leaped up, purring. "Did you find WindClan? Did you bring them back?" "Yes, Bluestar," Fireheart replied quietly. "They are safe in their camp. Tallstar told me to thank you." "Good, good," meowed Bluestar. Her eyes darkened as she noticed Tigerclaw's grim expression. "What has happened?" "Fireheart decided to return home, the riverclan territory," growled Tigerclaw. Greystripe looked up for the first time. "It wasn't just Fireheart who decided," he began. Tigerclaw interrupted him. "They were found by a riverclan patrol. If my patrol hadn't heard their yelps in time, they wouldn't have made it home at all." "So you rescued them?" meowed Bluestar, relaxing. "Thank you, Tigerclaw." "It's not that simple." Tigerclaw snorted. "They were fighting beside the gorge. A riverclan warrior who was battling Greystripe fell over the edge." Fireheart noticed Greystripe's flinch at Tigerclaw's words. Bluestar's eyes widened. "Dead?" she asked, looking horrified. Bluestar meowed quickly. "It was an accident. Greystripe would never kill a cat over a border fight." "I doubt Leopardfur sees it that way." Tigerclaw turned on Fireheart, his tail lashing from side to side. "What were you thinking, traveling through riverclan territory and with WindClan cats? You've sent a message that we are their allies, which will only drive riverclan and ShadowClan closer together." "WindClan was with you in riverclan territory?" Bluestar looked even more alarmed. "Just 2 warriors. Tallstar gave us an escort home. We were tired," Fireheart murmured. "You should not have been in riverclan territory," Tigerclaw snarled, "especially with WindClan cats." "It wasn't an alliance. They were escorting us back home," Fireheart protested. "Does riverclan know that?" spat Tigerclaw. "riverclan knew we were going to find WindClan and bring them back. They agreed to it at the gathering. They shouldn't have attacked us. It was a special mission, like the journey to Highstones." "They didn't agree to let you travel through their territory," spat Tigerclaw. "You still don't understand clan ways, do you?" Bluestar stood up. Her eyes flashed as she looked around at the 3 cats, but her voice was calm. You should not have entered riverclan's hunting grounds. It was a dangerous thing to do. She looked sternly from Fireheart to Greystripe. Fireheart searched her eyes for a harsher reproach, but found none. He felt torn between gratitude and guilt. He had caused a rift with riverclan that might threaten the safety of his clan for many moons. Bluestar went on, flicking her tail uneasily. At the same time, you did well to find WindClan and bring them back. But we will need to prepare ourselves for an attack from riverclan. We need to start training more warriors. Fireheart, Greystripe, Frostfur tells me 2 of her kits are almost ready to begin their training. I want each of you to take a kit as your apprentice. Fireheart felt stunned. What an honor! He couldn't believe Bluestar had suggested it, especially now. He glanced furtively at Tigerclaw. The deputy sat rigid as a rock. Greystripe raised his head. But none of Frostfur's kits are 6 moons yet. It won't be long before they are. The divisions at the last gathering troubled me. And today, Bluestar's voice trailed off, and Fireheart noticed Greystripe look down at his paws once more. Tigerclaw was staring at Bluestar, his amber eyes hard. Wouldn't it be better to ask a more experienced warriors like Longtail or Darkstripe to take on another apprentice? He asked. These two are hardly more than apprentices themselves. I did consider that, replied Bluestar, but Longtail will be busy enough with Swiftpaw, and Darkstripe is getting Dustpaw, ready to become a full warrior. What about Running Wind? Tigerclaw asked. Running Wind is a fine hunter and a loyal warrior, Bluestar answered, but I don't think he has the patience for mentoring. ThunderClan has better use for his skills. And you think these 2 have got what it takes to train ThunderClan warriors? Tigerclaw meowed scornfully. Fireheart flinched. Tigerclaw was eyeing him alone as he spoke. Does he think a kitty pet is not fit to train clan-born cats? He wondered angrily. Bluestar stared back at her deputy. We shall find out. Don't forget, they brought WindClan home. And of course, Tigerclaw, she added, I am relying on you to oversee their training. Tigerclaw nodded, and Bluestar turned back to Fireheart and Greystripe. Get something to eat, she ordered. Then rest. We'll have the naming ceremony for the kits at Moon High. Fireheart led Greystripe out of the den, leaving Tigerclaw behind with Bluestar. The rain had eased to a fine drizzle. I'm starving, meowed Fireheart. He could smell the warm scent of fresh kill in the clearing. Are you coming to get something to eat? Greystripe stood behind him, his eyes distant and sad. He slowly shook his head. I just want to sleep, he muttered. Once his stomach was full, Fireheart pushed his way into the warrior's den. Greystripe was curled up into a ball, his head tucked beneath his paws. Fireheart's eyes felt heavy, but his fur was still soaked, and so he forced himself to wash thoroughly before settling into his warm nest. Willowpelt woke Fireheart with a gentle nod. Time for the ceremony, she whispered. Fireheart lifted his head and blinked. Thanks, Willowpet. He meowed as he ducked out of the den. He nudged Greystripe. Ceremony, he hissed, then stood and stretched up on his toes until his legs quivered. He was about to become a mentor! Excitement tinged in his paws. Greystripe stirred and uncurled slowly like an old cat. Suddenly, Fireheart's paws seemed to remember their long journey and began to ache again. At least the rain had stopped. In silence, Fireheart and Greystripe padded into the clearing. The moon shone above the trees, turning the wet branches silver. Well done for bringing WindClan home! The cheery voice made Fireheart jump. He turned to see Halftail settling down beside him. You must come and share the story with the elders one night." Fireheart nodded absently, then looked back into the clearing. Frostfur was already sitting below the high rock. A kit sat on either side of her, one smudgy gray and one ginger. The White Queen twisted her head and licked behind their ears. The little gray she-cat shook her head impatiently as her mother fussed over her. Once more, excitement made Fireheart's fur tingle. Beside him, Greystripe sat staring at the ground. "Aren't you excited?" Fireheart asked. Greystripe shrugged. "Greystripe," Fireheart lowered his voice, "White Claw's death wasn't your fault. It was the worst place for an attack, and the riverclan cats would have known that. Sandpaw nearly fell over the edge too," he added. He glanced at Sandpaw sitting nearby. Beside her, Dustpaw stared at Fireheart with raw jealousy in his eyes. Fireheart couldn't blame him. He was about to become a mentor when Dustpaw hadn't even been given his warrior name. But he flinched when Dustpaw leaned towards Sandpaw and whispered loud enough for Fireheart to hear, "I feel sorry for Fireheart's apprentice. Imagine a clan cat being trained by a kitty pet." But for once, Sandpaw didn't react. She just shot an uncomfortable glance at Fireheart. Fireheart turned back to Greystripe. "Bluestar doesn't blame you," he insisted. "She knows you're a good warrior. She's given you your own apprentice." Greystripe lifted his eyes and replied bitterly, "She's just doing it because ThunderClan needs more apprentices. And why do we need them? Because I've given riverclan an excuse to hate us." Fireheart was shocked by the harshness in Greystripe's tone. Bluestar's muse summoned them before he could say anything more. Fireheart padded towards his clan leader, Greystripe trailing after him. When they reached the center of the clearing, Bluestar gazed around at the assembly of cats. "This moon high, we gathered together to name 2 new apprentices. Come forward, you 2. The gray kit darted from her mother's side into the clearing, her fluffy tail held high, her blue eyes wide. The ginger kit came forward more slowly. His ears were pricked, and he frowned with seriousness as he walked to the foot of the high rock. Fireheart's heart began to pound in his chest. Which one of these kits would he be given? He couldn't help feeling that the solemn-faced ginger kit would be easier to train, but there was something about the gray kit's clumsy enthusiasm that reminded him of himself when he first joined the clan. "From this day forward," Bluestar meowed, gazing down at the little gray kit, "until she has earned her warrior name, this apprentice will be called Cinderpaw." "Cinderpaw!" The gray kit couldn't help mewing her new name out loud. A quieting hiss came from Frostfur, and Cinderpaw ducked her head apologetically. "Fireheart," meowed Bluestar, "you are ready for your first apprentice. You will begin Cinderpaw's training." Pride swelled in Fireheart's chest. "You are fortunate, Fireheart, to have had more than one mentor. I expect you to pass on everything I taught you to this young apprentice." Fireheart suddenly began to feel a bit overwhelmed. Bluestar's words carried a weight of responsibility he wasn't sure he was ready for. "And share with her skills that you learned from Tigerclaw and Lionheart." At the mention of Lionheart, Fireheart pictured the golden warrior looking down at him from Silverpelt with warm, encouraging eyes. He lifted his head and returned Bluestar's gaze as steadily as he could. "And this apprentice," Bluestar turned her gaze towards the ginger kit, "will be known as Brackenpaw." Brackenpaw didn't move or make a sound. "Greystripe, you will train Brackenpaw. Our lost friend, Lionheart, was your mentor. I hope that his skill and wisdom will pass through you to your new apprentice." Greystripe lifted his head high at Bluestar's words, and for a moment, a gleam of pride showed in his eyes. He stepped forward and touched his new apprentice's nose with his own. Brackenpaw returned the touch politely. Only his eyes, which shone like stars, gave away the fact that this young cat was excited as his sister. As soon as Fireheart saw the pair touch noses, he realized he should have done the same. He stepped forward quickly. Cinderpaw jerked her head up, and their noses collided painfully. Cinderpaw touched his nose again, this time less awkwardly, but Fireheart's eyes were beginning to water. He could see that Cinderpaw was trying to stop her whiskers from twitching with amusement, and a flush of embarrassment washed over him. "I'm a mentor," he reminded himself. Fireheart looked around at the rest of the clan. Every cat seemed to be nodding approvingly. Then his eyes found Tiger Claw. From the edge of the clearing, the deputy's amber eyes seemed to mock him. Fireheart looked hastily down at Cinderpaw, who was staring at him with undisguised pride. Fireheart's fur suddenly began to prickle. He wanted to be a great warrior and a good mentor more than anything else, but it seemed painfully clear that Tiger Claw was just waiting for him to fail. Chapter 9. Fireheart woke to find Greystripe sitting beside him, hunched on his belly like a rabbit, his shoulders stiff and his fur fluffed out. "Greystripe?" he meowed quickly. Greystripe jumped. "Are you okay?" Greystripe sat up straight. "I'm fine." Fireheart suspected that his friend's cheery mew wasn't heartfelt, but at least he was trying to be more positive. "It looks cold," Fireheart meowed. Greystripe's words had billowed out in clouds. Fireheart was still snuggled down among the warm bodies of the other warriors. "It is!" Greystripe bent to lick his chest. Fireheart sat up and shook his head. The air tasted of frost. "What are you going to do with Brackenpaw today?" he asked. "Show him the forest," answered Greystripe. "I could bring Cinderpaw, we could travel together." "It might be better if we travel alone today," answered Greystripe. Fireheart felt a bit hurt. They had been shown ThunderClan's hunting grounds together as apprentices. He would have liked to have done it again as mentors. But if Greystripe wanted to be by himself, then Fireheart could hardly blame him. "Fine," he meowed. "I'll see you later. We can share a mouse like a pair of apprentices." "That'd be good," Greystripe meowed. Fireheart crept out of the den. The air outside was even colder. His breath swirled from his muzzle like smoke. He shivered, ruffling out his fur, and stretched one leg at a time. The ground under his paws felt like stone as he trotted over to the apprentice's den. Cinderpaw was fast asleep inside, a fluffy gray heap that rose and fell as she breathed. "Cinderpaw," Fireheart called quietly, and the little gray cat lifted her head at once. Fireheart backed out, and in a moment, Cinderpaw bounded from the den, wide awake and enthusiastic. "What are we doing today?" she meowed, looking up at him with her ears pricked. "I thought I'd take you on a tour of ThunderClan territory." "Will we see the Thunder Path?" asked Cinderpaw eagerly. Yes, we will," Fireheart replied. He couldn't help thinking Cinderpaw would be disappointed when she saw what a dirty, stinking place it was. "Are you hungry?" he asked, wondering if he should tell her to eat first. "No," Cinderpaw shook her head. "Oh, okay, we'll eat later," Fireheart mewed. "Well, follow me." "Yes, Fireheart." The young cat looked up at him, her eyes sparkling. The pang of sadness that had been lingering in Fireheart's stomach since talking with Greystripe was swept away by a warm feeling of pride. He turned and padded towards the camp entrance. Cinderpaw raced past him and charged through the gorse tunnel. Fireheart had to break into a run to catch up. "I thought I said follow me," he called as she scrambled up the side of the ravine. "But I want to see the view from the top," Cinderpaw protested. Fireheart leaped after her. He overtook her easily, climbed to the top, and sat watching a forepaw, keeping an eye on her as she scrambled from rock to rock. By the time she reached the top of the camp ravine, she was panting, but no less enthusiastic. "Look at the trees! They look like they're made from moonstone," she mewed breathlessly. She was right. The trees below them sparkled white in the sunshine. Fireheart took a deep breath of cold air. "You should try to save your energy," he warned. "We have a long way to go today." "Oh, yes, okay. Which way now?" She kneaded the ground with impatient paws, ready to dart away into the woods. "Follow me," meowed Fireheart. He narrowed his eyes playfully. "And this time I do mean follow." He led the way to a trail along the edge of the ravine into the sandy hollow where he had learned to hunt and fight. "This is where most of our training sessions will be held," he explained. During Greenleaf, the trees that circled the clearing filtered the sunshine into a warm dappled light, but now the cold daylight streamed down onto the frozen red earth. "A river ran here many moons ago. A stream still flows beyond the rise there," meowed Fireheart, pointing with his muzzle. "It's dry most of the summer. That's where I caught my first prey." "What did you catch?" Cinderpaw didn't wait for an answer. "Will the stream be frozen? Let's look and see if there's ice." She charged down into the hollow and headed towards the rise. "You'll see it another time," Fireheart called, but Cinderpaw kept running, and Fireheart had to race after her. He stopped beside her at the top of the rise, and together they looked down at the stream. Ice had formed at the edges, but the speed of the water as it slid over its sandy bed had stopped it from freezing over completely. "You wouldn't catch much there now," meowed Cinderpaw. "Except fish, maybe." The sight of the spot where he had caught his first prey filled Fireheart with happy memories. He watched Cinderpaw stand at the edge of the stream and crane her neck to peer into the black river. "If I were you, I'd leave fishing to riverclan," Fireheart warned her. "If they like getting their fur wet, then let them. I prefer dry paws." Cinderpaw pattered restlessly around in a circle. "What now?" Her excitement and his own apprentice memories filled Fireheart with energy. He bounded away, calling over his shoulders, "The owl tree!" Cinderpaw charged after him, her short fluffy tail sticking out behind her. They crossed the stream over a fallen tree Fireheart had used many times before. "There are stepping stones further down, but this is quicker route. Be careful, though." The pale white trunk was stripped of its bark. "It gets slippery when it's wet or icy." He let Cinderpaw cross first, keeping close behind in case she lost her paw hold. The stream wasn't particularly deep, but it would be cold as ice, and Cinderpaw was still too small to cope with the soaking. She crossed the log easily, and Fireheart felt a glow of pride as he watched his apprentice jump down onto the forest floor at the far end. "Well done," he purred. Cinderpaw's eyes shone. "Thanks," she mewed. "Now where's this owl tree?" "This way." Fireheart bounded away through the undergrowth. The ferns had turned brown since Greenleaf. By the end of leaf fall, they would be flattened by rain and wind, but now they stood tall and crisp. Fireheart and Cinderpaw wove their way beneath the arching fronds. Ahead, a massive oak towered above the surrounding trees. Cinderpaw tipped her head back, looking for the top. "Does an owl really live here?" she meowed. "Yes," replied Fireheart. "Can you see the hole in the trunk up there?" Cinderpaw narrowed her eyes to peer through the branches. "How do you know it's not a squirrel hole?" "Smell," Fireheart told her. Cinderpaw sniffed loudly, but shook her head, her eyes curious as she looked up at Fireheart. "I'll show you what squirrels smell like another time," Fireheart meowed. "You won't smell any around here. No squirrel would dare make its nest so near an owl hole. Look at the ground. What do you see?" Cinderpaw looked down, puzzled. "Leaves?" "Try burrowing under the leaves." The forest floor was carpeted with brown oak leaves, crisp with frost. Cinderpaw began snuffling around among them and then shoved her nose in right up to her ears. When she sat up, there was something the size and shape of a pine cone in her mouth. Yuck! Smells like crow food, she spat. Fireheart purred with amusement. You knew it was there, didn't you? Bluestar played the same trick on me when I was an apprentice. You'll never forget the stench. What is it? An owl pod, Fireheart explained. He remembered what Bluestar had told him. Owls eat the same prey as us, but they can't digest the bones and fur, so their bellies roll the leftovers into pots and they spit them up. If you find one of those under a tree, it means you found an owl. Why would you want to find an owl? Squeaked Cinderpaw in alarm. Fireheart's whiskers twitched as he looked into her wide eyes, as blue as her mother's. Frostfur must have told her the elder's tale of how owls carried off young kits who strayed from their mother's side. Owls get a better view of the forest than we do. On windy nights, when scents are hard to follow, you can look out for owls and follow where they hunt. Cinderpaw's eyes were still wide, but the fear had left them, and she nodded. She does listen sometimes, Fireheart thought with relief. Where's next? Meowed Cinderpaw. The great sycamore, Fireheart decided. They traveled through the woods as the sun rose into the pale blue sky, crossing a two-leg path and another tiny stream. Eventually they arrived at the sycamore tree. It's huge, Cinderpaw gasped. Small-Ears says he climbed to the top branch when he was an apprentice, Fireheart meowed. No way, meowed Cinderpaw. Mind you, when Small-Ears was an apprentice, this tree was probably only a sapling, Fireheart joked. He was still gazing up when a rustling sound behind him told him Cinderpaw had dashed off again. He sighed and chased after her through the bracken. His nose detected a familiar scent that made him nervous. Cinderpaw was heading towards Snake Rocks. Adders! Fireheart picked up his pace. He emerged from the trees and looked around anxiously. Cinderpaw was standing on a boulder at the top of the steep, rocky slope. Come on, I'll race you to the top, she meowed. Fireheart froze, horror-struck, as she crouched, ready to spring onto the next boulder. Cinderpaw, get down from there! He yowled. He held his breath as Cinderpaw turned and scrambled down again. She stood trembling, her fur on end, as Fireheart rushed over to her. This place is called Snake Rocks, he puffed. Cinderpaw looked up at him, her eyes huge. Snake Rocks? Adders live up there. A bite from one of those will kill a cat as small as you. Fireheart gave Cinderpaw a quick lick on the top of her head. Come on, let's have a look at Thunderpath. Cinderpaw stopped shaking at once. The Thunderpath? Yep, meowed Fireheart. Follow me. He led Cinderpaw through the ferns along a trail that skirted Snake Rocks and took them to the part of the forest where the Thunderpath cut through like a hard, gray river of stone. Fireheart kept one eye on Cinderpaw as they peered out from the edge of the forest. He could see from her twitching tail that Cinderpaw was desperate to creep forward and sniff the Thunderpath ahead of them. A familiar roar was beginning to ruffle his ear fur, and he could feel the ground trembling beneath his paws. Stay where you are, he warned. There's a monster coming! Cinderpaw opened her mouth a little. Yuck! She mewed, scrunching up her nose and flattening her ears. The rumbling noise was coming closer, and a shape appeared on the horizon. Is that a monster? She mewed. Fireheart nodded. Cinderpaw unsheathed her claws to grip the earth as the monster roared closer. She shut her eyes as tight as she could as it charged past, stirring the air around them in a storm of wind and thunder. She kept her eyes shut until the noise had faded into the distance. Fireheart shook his head to clear his scent glands. Sniff the air, he meowed. Can you smell anything apart from the Thunderpath stench? He waited while Cinderpaw lifted her head and took several deep breaths. After a few moments, she mewed. I remember that scent from when Brocustar attacked our camp. And it was on the kids he took when you brought them home. It's ShadowClan. Is that their territory? Beyond the Thunderpath? Yes, Fireheart answered, feeling his fur tingle at the thought of being so close to hostile clan territory. We'd better get out of here. He decided to take Cinderpaw the long way home, past Two Lake Place, so he could see Tall Pines and the Tree Cut Place. As they padded beneath the thin pine trees, the scent of Two Lake Place made Fireheart uneasy, even though he'd lived in a place not far from there as a kid. "Stay alert," he warned Cinderpaw as she crept along behind him. "Two Legs sometimes walk here with their dogs." The two cats crouched under the trees to look at the fences that bordered the Two Leg territory. The crisp air carried a scent to Fireheart's nose that stirred an odd feeling of warmth inside him, although he didn't know why. "Look!" Cinderpaw pointed with her nose at a she-cat padding across the forest floor. The light brown tabby had a distinctive white chest and white front paws. Her belly was swollen, heavy with unborn kits. "Kitty pet," sneered Cinderpaw, her fur fluffed out. "Let's chase her out." Fireheart expected to feel the familiar rush of aggression at the sight of a stranger on ThunderClan territory, but his hackles stayed flat. For some reason, he couldn't understand. He knew this cat wasn't a threat. But before Cinderpaw could attack, Fireheart deliberately brushed against a stalk of crunchy bracken. The she-cat looked up, disturbed by the crackling noise. Her eyes widened with alarm. Then she whipped around and sat up at a lumbering pace out of the trees. Within moments, she was heaving herself over one of the two-leg fences. "Rats!" complained Cinderpaw. "I wanted to chase her. I bet Brackenpaw would have chased hundreds of things today." "Yeah, but he probably didn't nearly get bitten by an adder," replied Fireheart, twitching his tail at her. "Now, come on, I'm getting hungry." Cinderpaw followed him through tall pines, grumbling about the pine needles prickling her paws. Fireheart warned her to keep quiet since there was no undergrowth here to hide in, and he felt every clan cat's discomfort at being in the open. They followed one of the stinking tracks gouged out by the tree cut monster and stopped at the edge of the tree cut place. It was silent, as Fireheart knew it would be until next Greenleaf. Until then, only the track marks, deep and wide, frozen into the soil, will remind ThunderClan of the monster that lived in their forest. By the time they arrived back at camp, Fireheart was exhausted. His muscles were still weary from the long journey with WindClan. Cinderpaw looked tired too. She stifled a yawn and padded away to find Brackenpaw. Fireheart spotted Greystripe beckoning to him from beside the nether clump. "Yeah, I got you some fresh kill," Greystripe meowed. He hooked a dead mouse with his claw and flung it towards Fireheart. Fireheart caught it in his teeth and lay down next to Greystripe. "Good day?" he mumbled with his mouth full. "Better than yesterday," answered Greystripe. Fireheart glanced up at him, worried, but Greystripe went on. I enjoyed it, actually. Brackenpaw's keen to learn, that's for sure." "So is Cinderpaw." Fireheart went back to chewing. "Mind you," Greystripe went on with a sparkle in his eye, "I kept forgetting I was the mentor, not the apprentice." "Me too," Fireheart admitted. They shared tongues until the moon rose and the coldness of the night drove them into their den. Greystripe was snoring within moments, but Fireheart was strangely awake. The image of the pregnant she-cat kept returning to his mind. Even though he was surrounded by the familiar smells of ThunderClan, her soft kitty pet scent lingered in his nostrils. He fell asleep at last, but his dreams all carried the same scent, until finally he dreamed of his days as a kit. He remembered lying beside his mother's belly, curled in a bed softer than any forest moss, with his brothers and his sisters, and still the scent of the she-cat lingered. Fireheart opened his eyes, suddenly jolted out of his sleep. Of course, the she-cat he had seen in the woods, that was his sister. And that's it. That's the end of chapter 9. We're on chapter 10. Oh. Ooh. Whoa, a lot happened. So, Blue Star, even though Fireheart and Greystripe really messed up, I am going to reiterate, they messed up. Yes, the mission was agreed to by everyone, but like Tiger Claw pointed out, it was not agreed that they would be traveling through anyone's territory. So, when it comes to clan traditions, in this instance, Fireheart and Greystripe were very much in the wrong. While us with our human thinking, we might say, oh, it shouldn't be. That is the way it is. But despite that, Fireheart and Greystripe got an apprentice. Greystripe definitely got the calmer one, though. Brackenpaw seems to be much calmer than his sister, Cinderpaw. Do you think that might be an issue later on, though? There's a lot of dangerous things out there. Oh, well. I guess we'll see. Do you think Greystripe and Fireheart will be good mentors? And what about Greystripe? A very traumatic thing happened, and he might be legitimately depressed. Do you think Greystripe is going to be okay? Do you think from this moment on, is riverclan going to consider thunderclan an enemy? Are the divisions between the clans going to be even more? I guess we'll find out. I hope you have a wonderful day. Be safe out there in this crazy mixed up universe of ours. Bye.